110 million. That's not a typo. That's how many Honda Super Cubs have rolled off production lines since 1958. To put that in perspective, the Toyota Corolla, the best-selling car in history, has moved about 50 million units. The Volkswagen Beetle, the iconic people's car, managed around 21 million. The Ford F-Series pickup, America's favorite vehicle for over 4 decades, sits at roughly 40 million. The Super Cub outsells all 3 of them combined. And yet, if you walk into any motorcycle forum on the planet and bring up the Super Cub, people will say, "That's not a real motorcycle, my grandmother rides faster than that thing." And why would anyone spend $4,000 on what's basically a scooter? So what's going on here? How does the most criticized, most dismissed, most boring motorcycle ever made also happen to be the most successful motor vehicle in human history? Let's talk about why everyone hates it first, because honestly they have some valid points. The modern Super Cub C125 makes 9.7 horsepower. That's it. A riding lawnmower makes more power. The top speed is between 55 and 65 miles per hour. That means you cannot legally ride it on any American interstate highway. You are paying nearly $4,000 for a machine that cannot go on the freeway. And then there is the identity crisis. Is it a scooter? Is it a motorcycle? Nobody knows. It has motorcycle-style wheels and controls, but that step-through frame and those leg shields scream scooter. Motorcycle purists do not want to claim it. Scooter riders think it is pretending to be something it is not. The Super Cub exists in a weird taxonomic limbo where everyone can agree on one thing, they do not like it. One British reviewer called it the Barbara Cartland of motorbikes, which is an absolutely devastating comparison if you know who Barbara Cartland was. Another reviewer said it lacks the practicality of a scooter while not being as engaging as a traditional 125 cubic centimeter motorcycle. It is the worst of both worlds apparently, and then there is the price. In America, the Super Cub C125 costs $3,899. Adjusted for inflation, that is nearly double what the original cost in 1959. You could buy a used Kawasaki Ninja 400 for that money, something that actually goes fast, something that people will not laugh at when you pull up. America straight up did not want the Super Cub for 44 years. Honda stopped selling it here in 1974 and did not bring it back until 2018. The market spoke and it said, no thanks. So the haters have a point. It is slow. It is weird. It is expensive. It is not impressive. But here's where things get interesting. To understand why the Super Cub wins despite all of this, you need to go back to 1956. It begins with a 50-year-old Japanese man named Soichiro Honda and his business partner, Takeo Fujisawa, standing on a European street corner watching traffic. Post-war Japan in the mid-1950s was rebuilding fast, but personal transportation was still a luxury most people could not afford. Cars were expensive. The trains were crowded. Small motorized bicycles and scooters from European manufacturers were starting to appear, giving regular people their first taste of independent mobility. Honda and Fujisawa spent months traveling through Europe, studying what worked and what did not. They watched Italian scooters zip through narrow streets. They observed German mopeds carrying workers to factories. They took notes on everything. But it was Fujisawa who had the insight that would shape everything. Back in Japan, he told Honda about the soba noodle delivery boys. These young men rode bicycles with one hand while balancing wooden boxes of hot noodles on their shoulders with the other. They needed a vehicle that could be operated with one hand, something anyone could ride, something that would not require athletic ability or special training. Fujisawa gave Honda 4 mandates. First, a 4-stroke engine instead of the smoky, unreliable 2-stroke engines everyone else was using. Second, a chassis that women could mount easily without having to throw a leg over a high frame. Third, no clutch lever on the handlebars, so new riders would not stall constantly. And fourth, a design that would look timeless rather than trendy. Honda's engineers thought he was crazy. A 50 cubic centimeter 4-stroke engine was nearly impossible at the time. 2-stroke engines of that size made sense because they are simple and lightweight. 4-stroke engines need valves and camshafts and oil circulation systems. All that complexity in a package small enough to fit in your hand? The engineering team said it could not be done, so Soichiro Honda told them to figure it out anyway. What emerged in August 1958 was the C100, the first Super Cub. It had a 49 cubic centimeter overhead valve four-stroke engine that produced 4.5 horsepower. That sounds pathetic until you realize that every other 50 cubic centimeter engine on the market was a two-stroke making 2 or 3 horsepower while belching blue smoke and breaking down constantly. The C100 had an automatic centrifugal clutch, which was revolutionary. You could operate the bike with one hand, twist the throttle and go. No complicated clutch lever to master. No stalling at traffic lights while you figure out the friction zone. A delivery boy could balance his noodles, a housewife could carry groceries, a businessman could keep his suit clean. Honda designed the step-through frame with that signature leg shield, making it easy to mount while wearing a skirt or kimono. He added a plastic fairing that protected riders from engine heat and road spray. The whole thing weighed about 70 kilograms, light enough that almost anyone could handle it. First-year sales hit 24,195 units, respectable but not exactly world-changing. Then something happened. By 1960, Honda was selling 564,365 Super Cubs per year. That was a 2,233% increase in 2 years. The C100 had captured 60% of the entire Japanese motorcycle market. Demand was so overwhelming that Honda had to build a new factory just to keep up. The Suzuka factory, which opened in 1960, became the largest motorcycle manufacturing facility on Earth, and it was built specifically to make more Super Cubs. But Honda was not satisfied with dominating Japan. He wanted the world. In 1959, Honda opened American Honda Motor Company in Los Angeles with a grand total of $250,000 and a handful of employees. The plan was to sell motorcycles to Americans, which was either brilliant or insane depending on who you asked. American motorcycle culture in 1959 was dominated by Harley-Davidson and the outlaw biker image. Motorcycles were for tough guys in leather jackets. They were loud, aggressive, dangerous machines for people who wanted to rebel against polite society. The Honda Super Cub, with its friendly curves and quiet engine, seemed like the exact opposite of what Americans wanted. Honda's American dealers pushed back hard. They wanted bigger bikes, faster bikes, bikes that could compete with Harley on Harley's terms. Nobody was going to buy a tiny Japanese step-through when they could have a big American V-twin. But Honda noticed something the dealers missed. Regular Americans, not the motorcycle enthusiasts, kept stopping by the showrooms asking about those cute little bikes. College students, housewives, retirees, people who had never considered owning a motorcycle before. In 1963, Honda launched one of the most successful advertising campaigns in history. You Meet the Nicest People on a Honda featured clean-cut, respectable Americans riding Super Cubs, families on weekend trips, students heading to class, professionals commuting to work, not a leather jacket or a skull tattoo in sight. The campaign was created by Gray Advertising and it ran for 12 years. The message was simple: motorcycles are not just for outlaws, they are for everyone. It worked beyond anyone's wildest expectations. By 1965, Honda had captured 70% of the American motorcycle market. A Japanese company that had not existed 20 years earlier was outselling every American manufacturer combined. The Super Cub had not just entered the American market, it had fundamentally rewritten what Americans thought motorcycles were for. But sales success does not explain why the Super Cub keeps winning. Lots of products have great marketing campaigns and then fade away once the novelty wears off. What makes the Super Cub different is what happens when you actually use one. In 2006, the Discovery Channel set out to find the greatest motorcycle of all time. They assembled a panel of experts, collected nominations from around the world, and then did something unusual. They actually tested the finalists. One of the tests involved taking a 1958 C100, the original Super Cub, nearly 50 years old at that point, and subjecting it to the kind of abuse that would destroy most modern machines. They rode it through water, they dropped it from heights, they neglected basic maintenance, they did everything they could think of to make it fail. The thing refused to die. The panel named the Honda Super Cub the greatest motorcycle of all time. Not the fastest, not the most powerful, not the most technologically advanced, the greatest. Because a motorcycle that never breaks down is more valuable than a motorcycle that occasionally goes fast. This is not just marketing mythology. The Super Cub's legendary reliability comes from very specific engineering choices that Soichiro Honda made in 1958 and that Honda engineers have stubbornly maintained ever since. The engine uses cast iron cylinder liners instead of the aluminum that most modern motorcycles use. Cast iron is heavier and more expensive to manufacture, but it wears slower and dissipates heat better. A Super Cub engine can run for decades without needing a rebuild. The oiling system uses splash lubrication, which is technologically primitive by modern standards, but requires almost no maintenance. There is no oil pump to fail, no pressure system to leak. The engine just scoops oil up with the spinning crankshaft and throws it everywhere it needs to go. The air-cooled design means there is no radiator to crack, no coolant to leak, no water pump to replace. The Super Cub does not care if you are riding through the Sahara or the Amazon. It just keeps working. The fuel economy is absurd. Honda claims 188 miles per gallon under optimal conditions. Real-world riding typically gets 100 to 120 miles per gallon. In 1981, a stock Honda C70, which is just a slightly larger Super Cub, entered the Shell Fuel Economy Challenge and achieved 198 miles per gallon, beating purpose-built economy machines with engines designed specifically for fuel efficiency. The Super Cub was not trying to win a fuel economy contest. It just happened to be better than the machines that were. And this brings us to why the Super Cub matters in ways that American motorcycle forums completely miss. Vietnam has a population of roughly 100 million people. There are 48 million registered motorcycles in the country. That's nearly one motorcycle for every two people, including children and the elderly. The Super Cub and its derivatives are so dominant that Vietnamese speakers use the term Etsy Honda, which literally means Honda vehicle, as the generic word for motorcycle. Regardless of brand, a Yamaha is a Honda, a Suzuki is a Honda. If it has two wheels and an engine, it's a Honda. From 1979 to 1995, Vietnam was completely cut off from Honda parts and new motorcycles. For 16 years, nothing came in. No spare parts, no replacement machines, nothing. The Super Cubs kept running. Vietnamese mechanics developed an entire cottage industry around keeping decades-old machines alive. They fabricated replacement parts from scrap metal, and they jury-rigged solutions the original engineers never imagined. When the embargo lifted, there were Super Cubs still on the road that had been in continuous use since before the Vietnam War. Honda's market share in Vietnam today is 83%. In Thailand, it is 78%. In Indonesia, it is 77%. These numbers show the Super Cub is not a niche vehicle for enthusiasts. It is the economic backbone of entire nations. The Super Cub moves food to markets. It transports children to school. It carries workers to factories. For billions of people, it is the difference between mobility and isolation. This is what American motorcycle forums often fail to understand. When you criticize the Super Cub for being slow, you are applying performance metrics that are completely irrelevant to its actual purpose. A farmer in rural Vietnam does not care about 0 to 60 times. A delivery driver in Bangkok does not need to exceed 60 miles per hour. A factory worker in Jakarta wants a machine that starts every morning and never costs more than they can afford to fix. The Super Cub costs $790 in Vietnam. That's not a typo. While Americans pay $3,899 for a Super Cub as a lifestyle purchase, Vietnamese workers can buy the exact same level of mobility for less than a month's salary. The pricing difference is not about exchange rates. It is about manufacturing in Asia for Asian markets and manufacturing in Japan for American markets. The cultural impact extends far beyond transportation. In 1998, the Guggenheim Museum in New York included the Super Cub in an exhibition called The Art of the Motorcycle. It was displayed alongside machines from Harley-Davidson, Ducati, and BMW. Not because it was fast or conventionally beautiful, but because it represented something important about design, that solving real problems for real people is its own form of RT. Japan Post, the National Postal Service, has used exclusive MD variants of the Super Cub since 1971. Those iconic red mailbags and matching red Cubs have delivered billions of letters for more than 50 years. The Postal Service tested other motorcycles. Nothing else proved as reliable or as economical to operate. In 2008, the British TV show Top Gear sent its presenters on a journey across Vietnam on Honda Cubs. The episode became one of the most beloved in the show's history, not because of the host's antics, but because of what the journey revealed about the machines. They survived everything Vietnam threw at them: flooded roads, mountain passes, mechanical neglect. They just kept going. In 2021, an anime series called Super Cub debuted in Japan. It follows a high school girl who buys a used Super Cub for about $17 and finds her isolated life transformed by the freedom it provides. The series is quiet and contemplative, the exact opposite of what you might expect from an anime about motorcycles. It captures something true about what the Super Cub means to the people who actually ride them. The Japanese have a phrase, "Start with the Cub, end with the Cub." New riders often begin with a Super Cub because it is forgiving and easy to learn. Then they graduate to bigger, faster, more impressive machines. But many riders discover, after years of chasing horsepower and performance, that they circle back to the CUB, because sometimes boring is exactly what you want. Now, things are changing. In May 2025, Honda discontinued the Super Cub 50 in Japan. The version with a 50 cubic centimeter engine that started it all can no longer meet modern emissions regulations at a price point that makes economic sense. The iconic original displacement is going away. But the Super Cub itself is not dying. Honda is launching the Super Cub 110 Lite in October 2025, a 110 cubic centimeter version with power limited to 5 horsepower for Japan's new licensing category. The company is also developing electric versions. The Cub E launched in China in 2023 for about $885, though it is limited to a 40-mile range that makes it suitable only for urban commuting. Honda has announced plans for 30 electric motorcycle models by 2030, with a target of 4 million electric bikes sold annually. The company that built its empire on the Super Cub's gasoline engine is preparing for a future where gasoline engines might not exist. Whether an electric Super Cub can capture the same magic as the original remains to be seen. The Super Cub's legendary reliability comes partly from its simplicity, from the fact that there is almost nothing to break. Batteries degrade. Electric motors have their own failure modes. The thing that made the Super Cub immortal may not translate to electric power, but here is what the haters miss. The Super Cub was never designed to impress motorcyclists. It was designed to move the world. Soichiro Honda did not set out to build a machine that would earn respect in American forums. He set out to build a machine that anyone could ride, anywhere, forever. And by that measure, the Super Cub is not just successful. It is the most successful motor vehicle ever created. 110 million and counting. The Beetle was cute, the Corolla is reliable, the F-Series is capable, but the Super Cub changed how billions of people move through the world. It democratized mobility in a way that no other vehicle has matched before or since. So yes, it is slow. Yes, it is boring. Yes, it is not a real motorcycle by the standards of people who measure success in horsepower. But while those critics are arguing on forums, the Super Cub keeps doing exactly what it was designed to do 66 years ago. It keeps getting people where they need to go. And it will still be doing that long after everyone has forgotten what they were arguing about. If you found this interesting, there is a video on screen about another boring machine that changed the world. And if you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person who should subscribe. I will see you in the next one.